You know, 6 years ago, we were on the stage with you at the 2014 Game Awards, accepting the Game of the Year for Dragon Age Inquisition. And since then...
You've been asking how the fuck did this happen? Okay, so people who have been following Dragon Age 4 stuff will know we haven't heard anything from BioWare in quite a while. So when the teaser trailer dropped recently, everyone was naturally whipped into a frothing frenzy by the merest insubstantial tidbits they had to throw our way. And honestly, yeah, it's hard not to be excited. Dragon Age Inquisition is a masterpiece, despite some minor hiccups here and there. And by minor hiccups, I mean that bloody annoying glitch that immobilises one of your team members until you take direct control of them and jump. That seems to unlock them. They're never going to solve that one, are they? I mean, knowing what I know now about Frostbite, I'm actually not surprised. But back to Dragon Age 4. We have an underwater scene, hinting maybe that they don't want to confine us to the land, like usual. I'm not holding my breath over this one, pun intended. Fancy magic using next-gen tech to maximum effect. At least I'm assuming that's what this is meant to make you think. The Undead Graveyard, which is mandatory for every swords and sorcery game ever. Various cultural scenes, because Dragon Age has always been very good at building a world, not merely making a place you come to beat up bad guys. Stylish characters, or at least stylishly drawn, which are very nicely drawn by the way, including of course Solus from Inquisition. I never played the DLC, so I can't properly spoil this for you. Not that I would. It looks exciting, tantalising, engaging, interesting, and lots of other positive words that end in ing. Unfortunately, it also served to remind me how much shite BioWare and parent company EA has put its employees through over the years. Now, it's Dragon Age 4. But before that, it was Anthem, and before that, it was Mass Effect Andromeda, and before that, it was Dragon Age Inquisition. And that's assuming there weren't any more I don't know about. After Anthem's failure, many at BioWare said the success of Inquisition was one of the worst things that could have happened to them.
Accepting the Game of the Year for Dragon Age Inquisition.
If you want to know the full story, I highly recommend you read Kotaku's article, How BioWare's Anthem Went Wrong. It's a marathon of a read, but very detailed and very eye-opening on just how dysfunctional things got. And for all we know, probably still is. The article itself sums it up nicely, so I'm going to cheat and quote it directly. Inquisition was the result of a brutal production process, plagued by indecision and technical challenges. It was mostly built over the course of its final year, which led to lengthy crunch hours and lots of exhaustion. Some of the people in Edmonton were so burnt out, they were like, we needed Inquisition to fail in order for people to realise that this isn't the right way to make games. For the longest time, Anthem's team was making decisions by committee. They'd talk out the options, home in on a choice, and then someone would say, well, what about this then? And the whole circus would start all over again, and again, and again, with no end in sight. At the time, Destiny had been out for a while, but the leadership refused to discuss Destiny, even allow discussion of it. This isn't Destiny. Which meant they also weren't learning from its mistakes, of which there were quite a few. The leadership changed more than once over the course of its 7-year development cycle, as did the writing team. And every time the writers changed, it changed the narrative, and therefore design and the very nature of the game entirely. It wasn't until the final 12-16 months when Mark Darrah joined the team, I apologise if I've just butchered his surname, and actually started making decisions, telling people, okay, go do that, get it done. Crunch had always been a thing at BioWare. If you don't know what crunch is, imagine someone's cocked up the schedule massively, And suddenly all that floundering around and time wasting, changing your mind 50 times a week has left you with literally everything still to do and no time to do it in. Education calls it cramming, where you cram all your revision into the last few days or maybe the last day before your final exams. The video game industry calls it crunch. It's stressful by all accounts, and that's putting it mildly. Many employees during Andromeda and Anthem had to take stress leave. And when I say stress leave, we're not talking about the company being nice and sending them home. No, we're talking about a doctor-mandated period of time off. I actually cannot count the amount of stress casualties we had on Mass Effect Andromeda or Anthem, an employee said. A stress casualty at BioWare means someone had such a mental breakdown from the stress they're just gone for 1 to 3 months. Some come back, some don't. Crunch is widespread within the video games industry, to the point it's expected in some places, and it sodding shouldn't be. But they had a special name for it: BioWare Magic. It sounds like I just made that up. I bloody didn't. What gets me is they didn't have to invent a name for it. It's not magic. It's stress. Fucking stress. Inflicted by poor time management. Plain and simple. You notice I say time management, because it's management's responsibility to make sure everything stays on schedule, that there's enough time to get shit done. If you're having to do crunch, that means management fucked up, either because they got the times wrong or kept changing things, or both. And then there's the Frostbite engine, which pretty much every developer under EA's umbrella hates with a bloody-minded vengeance. EA instructed all of its development companies to use Frostbite, since it, in theory, allows the sharing of knowledge between studios, but mostly saves money on having to license other people's video game engines. You know, since Frostbite was made by DICE, and DICE is owned by EA itself. It's using its own in-house engine. It's very good at first-person shooters. It was designed to make Battlefield games. It fucking sucks at everything else. And again, various BioWare employees have said Frostbite is full of razor blades. Nobody you actually work with designed it, so you don't know why this thing works the way it does. It's hard enough to make a game. It's really hard to make a game where you have to fight your own toolset all the time. So if, to take a purely hypothetical example, you were trying to make, let's say, an action-adventure swords and sorcery RPG, you're quickly going to realise that Frostbite is shit at this kind of thing. And it's this engine that, yet again, BioWare must use to create Dragon Age 4, because EA. It's like being asked to create an oil painting using a sewing machine, a metre of fabric and a spool of thread. Wrong toolset, arseholes. Apparently for Inquisition, they had to build a save load system and a third-person camera from scratch, because Frostbite doesn't do either of those very basic things. There were two studios, one trying to explain to the other what Anthem was, without actually knowing what it was themselves. There was, and still is, EA's push towards online services because it made more money, and single player is dead. Well, screw you if it makes your job building the game harder because you've never made an online video game before. There was no time to solve the long loading times. Performance capture is expensive, so no reshoots, but you're constantly changing the writers, therefore the story and therefore the script, so you're fucked. The build was so unstable it had to be tested in offline mode, even though Anthem was an online game. And while all this and more was going on at Anthem, the same kind of things were happening over at Mass Effect Andromeda, only it was further along the process of sinking into the cesspool. Many employees left BioWare during the development of both games. Some were decades-long veterans. Now, just because the company has the same name doesn't mean it still has the same talent working for it, or even that it's learned anything since then. And EA is going to continue to stick its oar in where it isn't wanted, and will probably push for an online bias for the new Dragon Age 4 as they have for everything else, because money and fuck you, that's why. I'm sorry, but I don't feel excitement for Dragon Age 4. Instead, I feel an enormous swell of pity for the poor bastards that now have to somehow make it happen while being pulled in 6 directions at once. Everyone getting excited right now about this would do well to remember 2 things. 1, all we've had is people talking and some concept art. Don't get carried away. 2, at least some of the causes of Andromeda and Anthem's failures are certainly still present at BioWare, unlike some of its staff. Apparently we won't see Dragon Age 4 before 2022, but if their recent history, plus the coronavirus pandemic of course, are anything to go by, I wouldn't go setting any dates in stone right now. Hopefully EA won't interfere too much, and BioWare's actually learned from its mistakes. That way we get an awesome game, and the developers get to keep their brains relatively stress-free. But I doubt it.